Okay, so let's talk about Tyler Perry's newest movie, because I didn't think I'd be back here reviewing a Tyler Perry movie, and yet here I am eating my words. So let's talk about 6888. Okay, so if you haven't heard, Tyler Perry has a new movie out. It is on Netflix. It's called 6888, and it's about an all African-American female women's battalion that served in World War II and was tasked with reducing the backlog of over 3 years of mail that was failing to get out to soldiers or to their loved ones. And they were tasked to do it in 6 months. They did it in 90 days. This group of women was made up of over 855 women, was led by Captain Charity Adams, and it is a little known Black historical fact, never taught about in school. And in fact, as someone who had the African American board game of fun facts and history growing up, it was never mentioned in there as well. So it's definitely a piece of American history that has been forgotten and brought back to life with this movie. And for that part, I am really grateful to Tyler Perry. Tyler Perry loves to kind of create these, he loves to center himself and his work around these museum pieces of like history, even with Tyler Perry Studios being built on an old abandoned army base and then revitalizing it and turning it into basically this African-American landmark. He's really interested in these types of topics. And even though as a craftsman of cinema, he doesn't always execute his vision very well, I actually thought that this was a nice attempt. And I was pleasantly surprised that we did not delve into too much Black trauma, that there were some stereotypical characters, but it was bearable in most cases, most instances. There was a nice evenness of stereotypical characters versus non-stereotypical characters from all perspectives that kind of evened out some of the worst instances of it in the film. And it was a really enjoyable film. As someone who obviously has been on record saying that I don't really care for Tyler Perry as much anymore, and someone who certainly was a fan of his craft back in the stage play days, and then eventually over time kind of became very disillusioned, I thought that this was a really great attempt at his first kind of major historical war drama. I can't say historical piece because Jasmine's Blues certainly was historical in nature and probably the first one that he kind of like cut his teeth at. But I thought that this was a good attempt. Not surprisingly, it stars Kerry Washington, who also came in later as a producer. And so I think that some of the film's success is probably directly due to her effort in the film. But let's talk a little bit more about what this movie is really all about. So, mild spoilers for the movie, but I will try to keep from exposing too many of the major film moments so that you can still enjoy a fresh look at the film. But the film centers around the character of Lena Delacourt, played by Ebony Obsidian, who you might recognize if you're a film buff from If Beale Street Could Talk. And she plays a young woman growing up in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania. Her mother caters for a wealthy Jewish family who she has grown up alongside the young man in this family, Abram David. And he is going to be going off to fight in the war. And as childhood friends, they are, of course, very dear to each other. And there might be a little bit more than friendship in the horizon for these two. When David goes off to war, Lena eventually decides that she too wants to join the war effort and do what she can to help stop Hitler. And so she also joins the Army or the Air Force and joins the Women's Army Corps, the 6888 Division. And there she meets a bunch of other young women. I don't remember all of their names, but one of them is played by Sarah Jeffery, who, if you're a fan of the Descendants saga or series, she starred in those movies. She also starred in the reboot of Charmed. She plays a young woman, Dolores Washington, who is of mixed ancestry. She is African American and Mexican. And she writes a letter to Mary McLeod Bethune, at least in the movie, to help encourage her to help these women to be able to join the army. We also meet Shanice Williams, who you might recognize from the television live adaptation of The Wiz. She played Dorothy. I have really been waiting for this young woman to start to shine because she has a beautiful voice. She has a bright twinkle in her eye, and I think she has what it takes. And it just hasn't really happened for her in film. So I'm hoping that this movie gives her opportunity to kind of climb the ladder a bit. She plays the character Johnny Mae Burton. And of all the characters, she does come across as the biggest kind of caricature. It's very much giving Danielle Brooks in both The Color Purple and also Danielle Brooks in Orange is the New Black, kind of that sassiness about her. She reminds me of like a young Danielle Brooks at that. So it's not a terrible part for her, and I think she was one of the more moving characters. She kind of comes up as some opposition for Lena, but it never really truly it never gave opposition. So I kind of knew what it was. It gave that she is the life and the character in the movie, and that was definitely what she was giving. And she's really the only one of the girls that we really get a chance to kind of get some real personality from and get to seemingly know a little bit about her character. Soon they arrive, and they are underneath the mentorship and direction of Captain Charity Adams, who is a real life person, and I'm definitely going to be trying to find out as much as I can about this woman because her life seems fascinating. She's played by Kerry Washington. A lot of people don't like the accent that Kerry Washington was using in the movie, but I think that's the only thing that I've heard people say about her performance, because she does a really good job playing this character, and she is the bright spot in this movie for me. There's a part of me that really does wish the movie had centered more on her, because being a black female captain during World War II, like, I want to know more about what that woman went through. We get glimpses of it, but I really would have liked to have spent more time with her character. There are lots of other soldiers that we see frequently on screen, and yet we don't spend any real time with them, so I did not remember their names, and I think that is unfortunate. And I think part of the reason why we don't get to know those characters as much is because the way the story is told. So let's talk about the narrative. Right, so the story starts out in Philadelphia with Lena's character. We get to know her, we get to see her motivations. She is essentially like the linchpin or the core of this movie. And I think while Lena, first and foremost, is a real woman that Tyler Perry got a chance to opportunity to meet, and her story is the basis of this narrative, I kind of don't think it should have been. I think if anything, when we should have met Lena was as maybe Charity was meeting these girls, spending time with these girls, and she fixates on not letting this one girl fail and then getting to know her. I think the story could have stayed the same, but if it just simply trimmed the beginning part of it and we met these girls when they go off into war, essentially, I think we could have gotten to know all of them a bit better, and there was a better way to kind of tell this narrative and to get more characterization and more story out of these characters. We spent a lot of time with the romance between Lena and David, and for me it does create kind of like a white saviory effect, and it kind of makes him the basis of her narrative. And listen, I get it, but this is a story about a little known Black historical moment. I'm not saying that obviously Black people, there's no such thing, or there shouldn't be, Black movies and white movies, and yet here we are. And so if we're going to tell Black stories, I don't think we have to center white people in Black stories all the time. For someone who has watched a lot of war movies, it makes zero sense to me why you waste good screen time in President Roosevelt, First Lady Roosevelt, and even Mary McLeod Bethune, although she could have been there. Certainly she could have been there through like a letter she was writing to the women, or to some kind of communication, or even a scene with Oprah Winfrey, who was playing that character, and Kerry Washington together, where maybe Mary McLeod Bethune goes to visit Captain Adams there's a way to have done that, and we just did not need Sam Waterston or Susan Sarandon. As much as I love both of them, we did not need them in this movie at all. That was just time wasted. Another thing that I thought would have been interesting from a narrative perspective is the training montage. A movie that's trying to drive home the message of how these women had to be just as good, if not better, than their white counterparts. Why not juxtapose their training montage with a split screen of the white male soldiers also going through the exact same training, just to showcase that these women were put through the same training, the same constraints as their white counterparts, and expected to be just as good. I think there's just little things that could have been like, if you are shopping your story in a room with other creatives helping you to flesh out the ideas, stick that on the board and say, now how can I show as much of this without just simply telling you everything? There's also a lot of backstory with Lena's character growing up in Pennsylvania that is very nuanced and different from most of the narratives around Black people during this time period. Most of those stories are centered around the Jim Crow South. And so I think if they were going to keep the story starting there, it would have been well served with having a voiceover to kind of explain how she's at this school with predominantly white kids, how she's very visibly able to be in a car with this white boy, having this white boy drive to her side of town, drop her off, very visibly like courting this white boy. That needed to be explained, even from someone whose family comes from Pennsylvania and who has family that is white presenting, who were alive during that time period. Like, I know some of that because I've done the work, and yet as someone who knows that, I still had to stop and think about that, like, and be like, why? Oh yeah, they're in Pennsylvania. Okay. And it took me a moment. And so you're making the audience do that work and that extra labor that they wouldn't have to do if you had used some of the other directorial tools that were at his disposal. Later on, the battalion is fighting to get a mission, and they finally get one. They get tasked to help push this mail out. And it is 3 years of backlog mail, 17 million pieces of mail that they have to push out. And so they head over to Europe to do this. And of course, like, first of all, people have never seen these Black female soldiers before. They're shock and awe. I thought all of those sequences were really nicely done. And then we get to the ramping up of the stakes. They're encountering racists. They're encountering bigotry. They're encountering being in these like really rough conditions and having to make the best of it, and showing how they make the best of it and they make everything around them better because they have had to always make things better. All of those were good scenes, good messages. And yet there were moments where, just from a person who loves film, if you're paying close attention, care isn't really always taking as much care as possible. There's a scene where they're passing around money, and there is very visibly current day money that's being passed around, not money that would have been like what the money would have looked like at that time period. There's also a moment where they're going to a graveyard, and it's not explained exactly where that graveyard is. And it's one moment where they've been giving us these moments where they've told us where we are in time, like where we are in the world, and they don't tell us where we've gone, and so we don't explain how we get to one point to the next point. And I was really confused. I had to ask my baby girl, did they go to America? Wait a second, they were just on it. They was on a boat, and it took them a long time to get on the boat to get where they're supposed to be going. And now are they back in America now? Is that Virginia? Are they what is happening? So I was a little confused in some of those parts. We also get another love interest for Lena, who later on becomes her real life, like her husband. That's a little bit of a spoil, but we don't know anything about this man. We don't really get to see them interact. I'm watching this movie. I'm like trying to like parse together this. He's interested, but we don't know anything about him. And I feel like that was kind of a disservice to her. If you're going to make this woman the center of your film, it feels like we don't really know her. It feels like the only thing we know about her is she loves this white boy down bad, so bad that she's willing to go off to war. Like, I just felt like for that part of it, I needed a bit more. I feel like the major flaw in this movie was the decision not to center it around Captain Adams, and instead really making these younger women around her ensemble to her and really feeling like an ensemble. This movie was 2 hours long, and this is going to sound like I'm ranting a lot because I did actually enjoy watching the movie, guys. I will probably watch it again, but to give you kind of some context, if you are of a certain age, you've seen a little movie called The Five Heartbeats. The Five Heartbeats is a musical historical drama as well about an all-male band from the 50s, 60s time period. You get to know all of those characters. You get to know them from their conversations of who they are together, and you get to see convergences of their life encroaching on the situation when they're together, so that at the end of it all, even though you spent most of the movie around one or two of the characters, you still know the motivations of all of the other young men. And really, not just the 5 heartbeats, but the men who kind of are around them as well. And I just felt like with this, we don't get to know any one character very well. And I think this is just because, in my opinion, Tyler Perry, who wrote this script in 2 weeks, he's not a great script writer for film. He was a really clever script writer for stage plays. He's not a great writer for film. And why not share co-writing credit? Why not give the abstract, pitch the movie, and then hire someone who is proving themselves to be competent in writing movies? Why not get them to write the script? Then you come back, revise, give notes, and then give them co-writing credit. I just don't understand some of the decisions he's making not to share his platform, his talent, or his resources to bring up the next generation of writers and directors and filmmakers, and to give them that credit in the movie's credits, because he's doing it purportedly, people are saying, behind the scenes. But that would really help someone to get propelled is if you saw this movie and it's directed by Tyler Perry, which seemingly he's a pretty competent director. People love working with him. Purportedly, he advocates for his actresses especially to get paid well. So all of that, I love all of that. And this movie looked good. The cinematography was decent. So seemingly the direction was pretty good. Why not have directed by Tyler Perry, produced by Tyler Perry, co-written by Tyler Perry and this other person, so that you get a really good quality movie, especially a movie that's as important as this movie? Because now this movie has been made, and when will we ever get another movie about the 6888? We may not ever get another movie about the 6888. And in 20 years, it may go the way of other, in my opinion, great historical dramas like the Ernest Green story, which I absolutely adore. A Soldier's Story, which I adore. Glory, which I adore, which people don't necessarily watch anymore or come back to a lot because of the time period. Only those like really history buffs or teachers in school who want to teach that time period, they will show it. When will people watch this movie? A lot after like the next 3 years or so. Will this kind of fade into obscurity? Maybe it won't, but why not give it all you've got? So my final thoughts about this movie are this movie was enjoyable to watch. I think it will be a good time to watch with your family. I was able to watch it with my baby girl. I wish I would have watched it with all of the kids. I will probably watch it again with all of the kids, assumingly if she's willing to do that, because I think it was important. It was a good starting off point to have the conversations about this topic. They've also never seen really a realistic war drama, so this is a nice kind of launching point for them. So in that regards, I thought it did that very well. It wasn't vulgar. It didn't have a lot of coarse language. It was very much age appropriate that I could show my 9, 10, and 11-year-old and feel comfortable with it. It was enjoyable. I thought Kerry Washington's performance was very well done. I actually thought all the actresses did really well, particularly Kerry Washington and Shanice Williams are standouts. I thought that Ebony Obsidian was absolutely gorgeous and she tried her best. I just think that she could have been given a little bit of better direction at certain points, but I think she was really good. She was the 3rd best actress here, just not the best. I don't think we needed Oprah Winfrey, Sam Waterston, or Susan Sarandon. And I would have liked to have seen more of the other young women who were a part of Lena's kind of core group, and understand, like really getting their bonds of friendship, seeing them kind of go through different struggles and them helping each other out, each individually, not just all helping Lena, so that we would have really gotten that bond of sisterhood. I think having a woman behind the scenes more in the inception of this film would have done it justice. I definitely think that you can see where Kerry Washington probably came in with her expertise and knowledge and tried to steer the boat in the right direction. All in all, this was really good for a Tyler Perry movie. And it was a decent movie. It was a decent made for TV historical drama. And even though at one point I was going to say that I thought that this could be in the theater, and I do still think it would have made money in the theater, I just think for the craft of filmmaking, it did leave some things to be desired, but overall the story was good, and I do appreciate the attempt. So I'm going to give 688. I'm going to give it a solid B. I think it could have done a couple of things better to bring it to an A and really made it that memorable movie. But over here I gave it on curve, and I'm not going to not give Tyler Perry his extra credit points. So I'm going to give him a B+. But I want to hear from you guys. I didn't trash the movie, but let me know in the comments what you thought of the movie. Did you enjoy it? Have you watched it? Are you going to watch it? Or are you just completely done? Let me know in the comments what you think, and I will see you guys in the next video. Toodles.